Okay, so I think this is 5:30. We can start. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending where you are at the moment. So as I said, here in Canada, it's super early morning. So, and thanks for joining our weekly seminars. So today we have an exciting topic, which I think everyone here on the platform is really excited to hear the topic, which is Biowaste economy in Rwanda. What is there? I don't know. What does it mean for female and male workers? So I think everyone is really excited. So first of all, on behalf of the center, let's wish Happy Women's Day to all women here doing science, conservation, and so on. So our speaker today have an exciting topic, and we're talking about some results actually from the research conducted in Rwanda about the biowaste workers satisfactory in Rwanda. So today we are really happy to be with Mélanie or Mélanie Surchat, I can say. Mélanie Surchat is a Swiss agroecologist who is carrying out the doctoral research in Rwanda on gender dynamics with a nutrient-based circular economy. Mélanie has a Bachelor of Science, Environmental Science from the University of Lausanne in Switzerland, and Masters of Science in Ecology from the University of Life Science in Norway. For her master's thesis, Mélanie spent along about 6 months in Tahiti, which is French Polynesia, to understand the drivers and the barriers for adoption of agroecological farming practices by farmers. She has produced a framework to calculate the farmers' proximity to agroecology principles, which her research published in different journals, including the Frontier of Sustainability. Today, Mélanie is doing her doctoral thesis at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, where she is embedded in the research project called LANRES, which is supported by the Swiss Development and Cooperation Agency. LANRES, or Rural Urban Nexus, tries to establish a nutrient loop to improve the city region food system resilience, and Mélanie's role in LANRES is to understand what are the social and the gender dynamics with this transition. I'm Dr. Jita Kalisa. I'm a member or research associate in the center. So on behalf of the center, I'd like to welcome Mélanie Surchat to share the exciting results for this topic.
Thank you very much, Kalisa. Actually, I just wanted to make Venon host and not me host because I had to admit everybody, and as I will be talking, that's a little bit annoying, but now I lost the co-host, so I have to ask first somebody to give me the co-host again. I'm sorry about that, so that I can share my screen. If there's Emmanuel Munezero, maybe you can pass me the co-host.
Akagore k'icyo kari gupresenta muri femina ya fe.
Okay, great. Okay, so I will start sharing my screen. Thanks a lot for that. So you can just tell me if now everybody sees my screen. Yeah, yes. Is it all good? Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Perfect. So I will start. First of all, yeah, so as you know, I will talk about the biowaste circular economy in Rwanda. Actually, the presentation was already quite long. I will just add tiny info. So yeah, who am I? So as Kalisa said, bachelor in environmental sciences. So my first field of interest was really climate change and what can we do about it. And then I was really brought or I got more and more interest into the agriculture, as agriculture is a great contributor to greenhouse gases emissions, but at the same time, there's lots of opportunities in the sector of agriculture to improve the practices, and that's what led me to do a master's in agroecology. So really the ecology of the food system, so how we can produce food by following ecological principles. And so if you look at the food system, then you really have the 5 different parts of the food system, from food production, transport, food processing, consumption, and then waste management. And as you know, in the global north, we actually throw a lot of food. In the global south, it's more the losses from post-harvest. That there's a lot of improvement potential. But yeah, I found this quite like it's a huge sector to link back these waste to again produce food, and this is what then led me to take this position as a PhD student in this project Run Risk that I will talk about later. And yeah, myself, I'm very much in love with mountains, nature, and lots of diversity in the field, as you can see on the pictures. So before talking and presenting you the content of my first field from this autumn in Rwanda, I will do a very short quiz about the current situation of solid waste management. There's a report that came out in 2019 from the Global Green Institute, and they did an analysis of the situation in the city of Muhanga and in Huye, where some of you must be standing right now. So I propose that you can just write your answer in the chat. So I will do, it will be three quiz questions with 3 possibilities, so 3 choices, and you can write in the chat which one you think is the good answer, so that we can directly jump into the topic. So question 1. So in the urban area of Huye, which represents approximately 65,000 of inhabitants, how much solid waste is managed per day in total? What do you think? Is it 15 tons of waste? Is it 50 tons, or is it 85 tons each day in Huye? So you can just write down what you think in the chat. What is the good answer? So I see 15. Don't be shy. There's no. Okay, just 2 people. The others, you don't have an idea of how much solid waste is managed per day. Okay, so we have now 3 times 15, 1 time 50. Okay, 15 or less. So the correct answer is 50 tons per day. So every day, approximately 1 person is like giving out these 0.7 kilograms of waste, which is a lot, as I guess you agree with me. The second question. So again, in Huye, how much of this generated waste per person, so each person is generating this waste, how much of this waste is being collected? Do you think it's 6% of the waste that is collected, 18%, or 36% of the total amount that is collected? What do you think? Okay, I see a 6%. 36 from Vinon. Are there some other guesses? Okay, 18. 18. Okay, so now we have a lot of 36, 18, 18, and 2 times 6. So actually, yeah, it is only 6%. Only 6% of solid waste is collected. So this means that all the rest of the waste is lying around around the rural areas, in the urban centers, or it's being burnt So the third question, again, in the urban waste, urban area of Huye, sorry, what is the proportion? So how, like more the composition of the organic material. So in a trash, if you imagine a trash of a family, which proportion of the trash is organic? Is it 60% of the trash, 75% of the trash, or 90% of the trash that is organic? What is your guess? You can type in the chat for those who just arrived. There's been quite some new arrivals. So I have 75%, 60%. And so, yeah, this is always specific to each city. You have to, of course, it will change if you go to Kigali or then to Muhanga. Now I have 90. Is there some more guesses? How much organic percentage in the trash? Oops, sorry, I changed the slide. But I don't see anybody typing anymore. 75. Yeah, so Simon, you were right. It's 75% of the solid waste is organic. 8% approximately is plastic and 6% is paper. So yeah, what does this mean? There is lots of organic waste that is there. Most of it is not being collected and is therefore rather leading to pollution, polluting either the water bodies and then creating health issues, or it's being burnt and it's leading to gas emissions. And this is really a shame because actually it could be used to produce animal feeds or fertilizers, which I will be talking about today. Okay, so about the agenda for today, I will give you a background on RunRisk, which is the project that I'm directly attached to for my PhD. Then I will give a little bit of background on circular economy and an amendment to the concept of circular economy. Then I will present briefly my research plan and two main definitions that I will be using. And then I will really show you what is there. So the sample of 6 waste innovations that I visited. Then I will present some of my results, and then we'll have a question and discussion, hopefully for at least 15 minutes at the end. And just for a small rule for the session, like please speak out if you have a question. You can always interrupt me. Just like unmute yourself and ask your question whenever you want. I really don't mind. Okay, just checking if there's something in the chat. No, it's all good. Okay, so about RunRisk. So RunRisk stands for Rural Urban Nexus Resilience, as you can see in the name. And so here you have 2 pictures that I have taken myself in Rwanda. On the left, you have Kigali, the nice hills, very densely populated areas. And as you know, Rwanda is the most densely populated country in Africa. And then on the right, there's a picture I took somewhere around Kamoni, which is, I mean, like most of Rwanda, very agricultural. You can see signs of soil degradation with the steep slopes, heavy rains, acidic soils. And the thing is that actually on the urban side of this picture, there's often no solid waste management in the cities. In Kigali, it's semi-happening, but in more remote cities, it doesn't happen at all. And also sanitation issues, so with a lack of toilets or toilets not being emptied. And this leads to, as I said, public health and pollution. And on the right, you have a constant export of nutrients. So nutrients are being mined outside of the system because of very intense farming practices. There's rarely land that is put on a pause because people cannot afford that. So the land is being constantly, something is being produced on the land, and this leads to a lot of loss in soil fertility. So the idea of RunRisk was really to link back these 2 systems. So there's on the one side, the urban, which consists of a nutrient sink where nutrients are coming. And this is the consumption zones, as you see on this graph. And on the other side, there's the farming areas that are constantly losing nutrients. So the idea was really, how can we bring the flows of nutrients back to the farming, to the production side. And for this, so the Runward project is working in 4 different city region food systems in Ethiopia, in Rwanda, in DRC, Bukavu, so very close to Rwanda, and also in Muzunduzi in South Africa. And in these 4 city region food systems, different innovations are being tested. So this is what you can see in the small rounds. And really, we're trying to work not only on the food waste, so what you see in blue, and the organic food waste, but also on human waste, which means human excreta. So we try to also push forward some technology around toilets. And then there's also the farming to the trading. So as I told before, there's also the problem of post-harvest losses. So we're also trying to put in place some small-scale processing to increase the shelf time of products. So if I go a little bit more into details, I don't know why there's a line here on my screen now, but yeah, I will have to go with this. So these 4, as I said, the rounds here represented the different innovations. So just to give a tiny overview, so the red ones that are trying to recycle human waste, we are testing ecological sanitation, some struvite precipitation, biochar, then the blue ones, and these ones are the ones taking place in Rwanda. So we're really focusing on composting and producing some livestock feed. And finally, there's the green ones on small-scale processing, and this is taking place a lot on the banana value chain in Ethiopia. So as I said, so circular economy is trying to bridge again. So these nutrient loops together with some innovation, some small techniques. So the technosphere is being linked to the biosphere. But there's actually quite some criticisms, some amendments that have to be done to this framework, because in both of these loops, in farmers working with the nutrients, or in the innovations where there's machinery and people operating machineries, actually it's the human beings that are doing this work that should be in the center of this circular economy. And we are doing this to have a more sustainable future. And as you know, sustainability has 3 pillars: ecological, economical, and social. And that's why, so this framework is proposed by these guys, Schroeder et al. And they really try to offer a new way of looking at circular economy by putting the center on the human development that should be really an objective of circular economy. And so this paper, again, they highlight some research gaps in the overall landscape in this debate. And this is really what I tried to address with my PhD. So at least these 2 first working packages. So the first one is really the fact that there's very little investigation of the gender perspectives in circular economy. So we don't really know how are women contributing to circular economy. We know that innovations are not gender neutral. Well, in Rwanda, you are very much at the forefront when talking about this, but in the other countries where Runward is working, it's not the case. And then in addition to this, there's also the idea that circular economy is very much... circular economy is very much promoting the idea that it's creating jobs, especially in the global south, that this is positive because there is a job scarcity, but there's no papers or very little information actually that is trying to say if this is the case or not. So we don't really know if it's creating jobs, and nobody has been talking about the working conditions, if there is a gender pay gap, and also what happens in the informal sector with waste pickers, for example. It's now a huge informal economy around the waste and e-waste as well. So these are really the big research gaps that I wanted to dig in by taking into example the Rwandan case. So my research plan, so I started to think, okay, I want to look at the Rwandan bio-waste circular economy innovations. To do this, I wanted to first focus on the jobs created by these bio-waste economies and to try to see, okay, are they decent? So I chose 6 sites and I did a survey with 63 workers. I will brief you through this table because I will show pictures afterwards, but can the people mute themselves in the public? It's a little bit disturbing for me to talk when I hear people. It would be great if you can mute yourself. Sorry. So yeah, so just to present the different stakeholders, there are the 3 beneficiaries from Runris that are Akanose, Magot, and Coeb that are all in the Kamoni district. There is 1 compost production site and 1 black soldier fly larvae one, and 1 that is using cassava peels. And then I chose also 3 other sites that exist. Green Care is actually also doing compost in Huye. Then we have Sanejo and Nyanza and Ineza also doing compost, but in the northern province. So I interviewed a large part of the workers of these 6 innovations. Then I tried to think, okay, so it's good that they're creating jobs, there's workers, but what does this work really mean for the people? This was a second part, so really trying to understand, does it empower the people? And for this, I did in-depth interviews. And finally, the last part will be, but this I will come back to Rwanda next winter, I guess. It will be to understand more the challenges on the innovator level, so not the workers, but actually the people that are putting in place these innovations, and to understand rather the challenges on a structural level in terms of gender norms, regulatory challenges, maybe lack of standards, policies, and stuff like that. And all this together should give me an overview of the waste sector, organic waste sector in Rwanda. So the 2 definitions that I'm using, I will go very quickly through them, but it's really decent work, which is a concept from the International Labor Organization. And they more or less put at the forefront that decent work should deliver a fair income. The work should be secure. People should have social protection. It should allow them to express their concerns, to have better personal development, and also the workers should have equality of treatment and opportunity. So female and male workers should be treated the same. And then in terms of economic empowerment, this is a theory that says that it's the capacity of women and men to participate in, contribute to, and benefit from the growth processes. And this is the definition from the OECD. So with this, the first research question was really, to what extent can the bio-waste circular economy contribute to creating decent and inclusive job opportunities? And the second one is, to what extent do these jobs actually allow to economically empower the female and male workers? So with this, I will now go into the sample to show you some pictures of what is there. That was what I offered with this seminar. So the first innovation is Green Care in Huye. Green Care is benefiting from infrastructures from the city of Huye. So in the sense, it's a public-private partnership, but as Huye is a secondary city, there's no sorting implemented in Huye yet. So you can see on these pictures that the mix, the waste that they receive on the site is completely mixed with inorganic, organics, textiles, plastic, metals, alu, and this makes it quite challenging to then produce this compost, because many women are spending lots of time to sort this waste. Men are mostly doing the piles of compost heaps, turning the compost heaps, and doing the packaging. On the second site, Coeb. So Coeb is similar to Green Care, also producing compost, but they are based in Rwanda, and that means that most of their clients are having a willingness to pay for the collection of sorted waste. So as you can see on the left, Coeb has implemented waste separation at source, which means that these households, they are paying a certain fee. I don't have the amount of Rwandan francs in mind, but they pay a certain fee. They get the blue bag for inorganics and the green bag for organics, and they are giving their waste to the Coeb people once per week. And then this allows to produce much easier a high quality compost, as you don't need to invest as much time on the separation. Then there's Inessa, the third compost innovation in my sample. It's a female-led enterprise led by Félicité in the northern province in Gicumbi. As you see here on the picture on the left, so first of all, the site is quite remote, difficult to access. There's no electricity on site. So the sieve, here you can see a manual sieve that is used for the compost. Everything is by hand. Whereas on the other sites, they have some mechanical help for sieving, for example. And it's also female-led and only female workers on the site because Félicité really has the idea to empower female workers. So yeah, and here as there's no value that hasn't been found for the inorganics, they just lie around as a dump site at the moment, which is also problematic. Then there's Sanejo in Nyanza, so very close to where most of you are in Huye. So Sanejo is held by Ernest. He did a bachelor's and then decided to use all these crop residues from neighboring farms. So here you can see a stack of, I think it was sorghum straw, but he gets for free some leftovers of bean residues, sorghum, rice residues, and he has to buy cotton husks from Tanzania. And all these crop residues, he mixes them, adds some water, some lime, creates these small bags, as you see here in the middle. These bags are then being sterilized, being inoculated with mushroom spawns. And then so here you see the mycelium who is slowly colonizing this environment. And then he can produce oyster mushrooms, which you see on the right. And he exports these mushrooms to restaurants and hotels, mainly in Kigali. So this is also a very interesting nutrient recovery option that leads to a high value product. And he's employing 8 men to do this work. Then we have Akanose in Kamoni. So Akanose is also a female-led enterprise. Alice, the woman here on the left, she's the leader. And she wanted to find a solution to valorize cassava peels. Because as you see in the middle, and as you know cassava better than me, the peel is quite thick, represents 30% of the weight of cassava. And peels are not being used at the moment. There's nothing to do with the peels, which is really like just a shame because they have nutrient value. So now with Runrace, they got some small funding to get some machinery and they're able to chop, to press the water content, and then to dry and to grind these cassava peels into flour. And this flour is being sold as animal feed, which is then being sold to many fish farmers in Rwanda. And this again is really very much appreciated as the animal feeds are highly taxed and are very expensive and out of hand of smallholder livestock farmers in Rwanda. So here again, I think it's a very interesting model. And the last one is Magot from Balthazar, who I think is with us today. So maybe at the end of my presentation, he can also say something. So Balthazar is the CEO of this black soldier fly larvae innovation in Kamoni. So here as well, very, very interesting models. So they are getting so they're paying for some fruit leftovers from Inyange, so the juice factory, and some household food waste that is being first grinded in some smaller parts. And then this waste is being fed to the larvae. So the larvae of these black soldier flies. So this is here in the middle, you see the eggs of the flies that are very, very tiny. And they're being fed on this waste. And in a very short cycle, in 18 days, they become quite thick larvae that can then be sold raw, also as an excellent animal source feed. So these are the six innovation sites that I visited. And these are the innovation sites where I interviewed the workers. And now I will start presenting the results of this worker survey. So in total, I had 27 women and 36 men on these 6 sites. And my point was to understand to what extent can the biowaste economy innovations contribute to creating decent and inclusive job opportunities. Okay, so I will present quite some tables right now for this first research question. So on this table, I just want to show a small summary of the different sites on the top here. And then on the left, you have the indicator that we look at. So number of workers interviewed per site and how much they represent the total sample. And finally, the average age, the percentage of male workers on the site, as I'm interested into inclusivity. And then finally, also the workers who have children or not. So as you see on the right here, so if we look at the age, the average age, we have some sites where people were actually quite older and some sites that were very, very young. But the average is 31.9 years. So it's just outside the youth category in Rwanda, going from 18 to 30 years old, I think. But it's still for very young adults. So who is working there? It's really the young adults. Then another important number, when we look at the percentage of male workers on site, so the average is 57. So that means 43% of women are working in these innovations, which I think is a very high number compared to average women participation in the non-farm economy, which is great. And finally, also the fact that 54% of these workers have children, that also infers that having this access to this paid job might improve really the situation of the next generation, because these people have income and they can, I mean, they were telling me that they can really invest into the schooling, so it can really help their children to gain a better life. If we continue with the description of the sample, then looking at their profile. So on the left here, in terms of marital status, one surprising fact was that actually 8 out of 27, so 30% of the women were single mothers, which I think is, again, quite surprising and a high number. And in terms of educational profile, they were rather low educated, with in total 76%. So if we clusters these three groups, so 76% completed primary schooling, but there's very little people that go above that. Finally, this is a very important graph about their satisfaction. So they were asked, what is their overall satisfaction of the work? And they were able to answer between 1 to 5. So 1 is equivalent of very dissatisfied to 5 very satisfied. And so 3 is an average. I'm neither satisfied nor satisfied. And the colors here correspond to the different innovation sites. And then, as you can see, I separated by gender. And on this side, you can see that the variation between the male answers and the female answers is very, very different. I have some hypothesis why this might be the case, but I will leave this for the discussion. But yeah, so men seem to have a much more criticism, or yeah, maybe bargaining power, but yeah, they gave quite some different scores. But overall, it's still much more on the positive side. So I think we can say that people are rather satisfied. Then in terms of contract types and wages, so most of them don't have written contracts, so it's still mostly in the informal economy, but it's also, this is also representative in Rwanda, so it's not only the bio-waste economy, but the economy is still very informal. And in terms of wages, the average is 32,000 Rwandan francs per month, which is also, compared to some World Bank data on salaries, is quite decent, knowing that teachers are being paid 40,000 per month in the rural area. So for a job that doesn't require high education, it's also, of course, it's very little, but yeah, compared to the jobs that are available in these areas, I think it's quite fair. And then the workers were also asked to say, so how do they feel in terms of power that they, for themselves, to take decisions in their lives? And they could answer between they have no input at all on any decisions in their life, or they have input on very few decisions in their life, or input in some decisions in their life, or input into most decisions in their life. And as you see, the women and the men really answered that they have input on some or most decisions in their life. So here again, and that was really my impression, the workers have a high agency, and they are not, I felt quite positive about their working conditions in this economy. So the take-home message to answer to this first research question, so I put down some of the important components of decent work. So in terms of wage, and the fact that also 60% of the women were doing savings and 72% of the males said that they were doing savings, I think we can infer that it's quite a fair income. About security of the job, of course, it's still informal for most of them, but it's a permanent job instead of most jobs that are casual or seasonal in the rural area. This is again quite a big positive aspect of the job. In terms of equal treatment of opportunities for men and women, I was not able to see any gender wage gap. So the women and the men were paid exactly the same, which is great. And in terms of hierarchy, I could also see that sometimes it was a female supervisor and sometimes a man supervisor. And what played a role was rather the education level and not the gender. And then in terms of personal development of the workers, I think we can say that they are rather satisfied with an average of 3.5 out of 5. So I think we can say that this economy is developing the workers, and in that sense, it's decent. Now, if we go to my second research, so the Photovoice. So just to explain very shortly the method, Photovoice aims to, it's a participatory approach. So I lend a physical camera to the workers, and they had to take some pictures to express positive and negative experiences in their job. And I did not take any of these pictures. It was really them who had the power to frame and to show what they think is important. And so I did this method with 17 workers on 3 sites only. And in total, 9 women and 8 men participated to this research. And so my research question, so that you have both of them in your minds. So to what extent do these jobs allow to economically empower the female and the male workers in the biowaste circular economy innovations? So one of the big topics that was discussed, so the thing is that I made them take the pictures, I printed the pictures, I came back with the pictures that I put on the table, and I carried out an interview in Kenya, Rwanda with a local Rwandan student who helped me, Miklin. And so Miklin was conducting the interview and translating to me, and we tried to go on the important topics that are linked to their experience of positive and negative aspects. And one thing that came out a lot is that they're doing savings. Many were contributing to EB Minas every week or every month. Some were investing into livestock, some were buying some small land, some were improving their clothes. So I mean, they were really starting to in a sense, have a bridge to maybe a better life. The young man on the right was telling us in their interview that the bad job brings the good one. So he was very positive and he enjoyed his position, and he doesn't have family or kids, and he's okay to work hard. And he hoped that in a couple of years, maybe he can buy some more livestock. He came from the Eastern province, and maybe then he can be a livestock farmer once he had saved enough money. Then in the positive experiences, there's also in empowerment, there's also the idea of social empowerment, and the fact that the people are having a job. This gives them a lot of pride. They're having a job where they interact with other people, they discuss, and this interaction can really improve their collective bargaining power. Some are also grouped into cooperatives to save together. And this, I think, is also a very positive outcome of these new jobs. And most of the workers also, one of the pictures that they take for themselves was always a picture where they showed their responsibility within the innovation side. So this woman was the only one with secondary education, and she was responsible to do the wages for the other workers. And this brought her a lot of pride to be the one that was had the confidence from the bosses to do this. So I think this is also something very interesting about these jobs, even though it's difficult jobs. About the more negative experiences that was reported to us was the fact that some of the machinery is dangerous. Sometimes also they don't have like the gloves tend to get used very quickly, or they don't have masks. So they were saying that the protective materials should be improved on a quicker rate. That also the wage is still low compared to the physicality of the job. And then, of course, the fact that there's no waste segregation at the source means that when they are sorting the waste, they can happen to cut themselves, or sometimes there's some medical devices in the waste. And this led them to quite some stress about injuring themselves. Finally, as well, to come back to the gender aspect of the empowerment, what I found quite interesting is that most of the tasks, so actually all the tasks on these sites were gender specific. So at Akanose, of course, the women are peeling. At Coeb, the transport is being done by the men. And at Green Care or all the compost sites, the sorting is being done by the women. And the women were really emphasizing many times that actually for them, like it's very hard to find a job in the rural area. It's very, very difficult, even more difficult than for men, because for most of the jobs that are available, men have more physical strengths. And of course, men are preferred to women. But in the case of the bio-waste economy, it's not always the case, because there are these specific tasks, such as sorting or peeling, where there's a female preference. So the innovation leaders prefer to hire women. And this, again, is very positive for them, because then they are accepted fully in this innovation. So if I try to answer now to the research question 2, so in terms of aspects that contribute to empowering the workers, I think that the bio-waste economy is really giving access to a more secure employment, that even though the wage is not huge, some workers were still able to save, that this work is bringing people together and is socially empowering them as a group. And that it's also great because there's this female preference for some jobs which allow women and single mothers to get an income, which really secures the most marginalized groups in the society. But then the aspects that are preventing from the empowerment is, of course, the informality and sometimes also the security at the workplace. But then if you look at my statements in red, and if now we go more into the discussion part of this presentation, these aspects are, of course, limited by the fact that the innovation leaders don't have enough capital to pay for the high costs related to waste management, in addition to give a higher salary, to pay the social taxes. I mean, the innovation leaders cannot provide for all this money themselves. And that's why it's very important to really raise awareness about waste management and the cost of waste management, the need for infrastructure, the need for land, the need for machinery, and also for waste separation at the source. And that all this should be also taken into account by the public sector. So this is a little bit what I really think is really now needed for not only the collection rates to be increased, but also for the conditions to improve. So with this, we can go into the question phase and comments. And I guess there's Balthazar. I will stop sharing for a moment. And if Balthazar wants to share something, because he's one of the innovation leaders, he can just raise his voice. And I'm looking forward to your comments. And thank you for listening. So you can just talk, I guess, and speak up, or I check the chat, but I think it's easier. So please don't be shy. Otherwise, I have question prepared. I can also get them out, but
Yeah, thanks, Mélanie. So this is very exciting. While we're waiting, maybe Balthazar to have a say. So we can still welcome some question and feedback. I enjoyed the presentation as well. I have a particular question. Yes, let's talk about the job satisfaction. Yes, I understand we highlight more in terms of the difference between men and women, but my question is about pollution perspective. So I'm doing a research on air pollution, and the West is a major sources of some of the particulate and gases. And I saw most of the companies, waste collectors, they just care on the money, and they have been seeing most of the workers, they lack especially PPE, so they don't have mostly the personal protective, which they are really exposed. I personally see them coming home collecting waste with unprotective equipment or mask, anything else, and after they just lie on the truck, then going breathing all the thousands of particles and gases. So what do you think in terms of pollution perspective? We may think, yes, in terms of income, something like that, but these workers are really exposed to pollution. And I think if there is a research done in terms of their health status, they could have been exposed to a lot of pollution, especially for those who have been working there. You have seen some pregnant women working there, which are exposed for tons of particulate at the site. What do you think? We may, answering one problem of collecting the waste by causing another problem, which is getting these workers exposed, because I don't find most of the company, they don't have such measures actually to protect their workers. You see most of the trucks transporting around the city, all means they're just lying in the truck, in the trash, smearing, breathing all the gases and particles emitted from those waste.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think for sure some processes that are, on some sites, they collect the compost, but of course, as I showed, there's all this plastic lying around and they have to do something with the plastic. And a lot of them are doing some bricks with the plastic, and they're melting plastic in big basins and they don't have any mask. This is definitely really detrimental to health and really problematic. But yeah, my point is that on the leader viewpoint, it's not that they don't want to do it, but it's that they don't manage to cover all the costs to put in place this circular economy, which is really difficult. It's really tough. The sector is not there. The transport is complex. It's expensive. They have to hire companies to transport, and then they have to pay for all these costs for the workers. Of course, it's super important and it has to be improved. But that's where I really think that the public sector has to help in this transition. And then another aspect, that's because this is something I discussed. I did a stakeholder workshop before leaving in January, and I showed these results and I tried to discuss with the leaders what are the improvements that they are capable of doing, like already small improvements. And the protective materials were one of the topics. I also mentioned, like, why don't they have masks, for the gases, better gloves. And then they were saying that sometimes, like, the workers actually get new gloves, but they don't use them because at the minute they start sweating, they don't like it anymore, so they take them off. So I guess there's also a part of maybe education or maybe awareness for the workers themselves about the risks, or I'm not sure they are aware of, they have low education. I'm not sure they're aware about the gases that are coming out. So I guess there's multiple answers to this question, but for sure, it's definitely something very important.
Thank you. I have the last one in terms of economy. if you look most of the households, we all pay the money for collection of this waste. But if you look the perception of most of the household owners, they are not really happy with the money they pay because they think as well as they provide the waste for economic base because those companies transform the waste into other material for economy. They think actually they should buy the waste instead of paying the waste collection. Like other developed countries, I'm not sure. I already see city councils collecting waste from each household. I'm not sure if the house they pay, they see most of the city council collecting the waste. So what do you think? Because in terms of perception of those households.
Yeah, so this is a very, very good question. And this was one of the things I wanted to discuss. How can we promote waste segregation in Rwanda? And there's two main ideas. There's the push and the pull strategy. So giving the carrot or putting the fine. And yeah, this is not now the objective of my research, but if there's a student out there who wants to investigate this precise question, what would work better? There's even some models. It's called the RANAS model. I can write it in the chat. And it's for behavior change to push forward like adoption of such. I cannot wait. Everyone, voilà. Yeah, so I put it in the chat. RANAS model from EAWAG. It's a very good model that really tries to understand the household. How do they think? How can something make them change their mindsets? And so then at the end of the line, how can you really improve? And yeah, now we're doing this in Bukavu in Congo. There's a master student that is going to look exactly at this question, how to motivate. And in Rwanda, I guess like people do understand that organic has value. They do know that next to the pit latrine, the stuff grows better. And they were still sometimes excreting it fields at night. I mean, these are practices that are well known and people have the knowledge that there's nutrient value and waste. So I think this is a good starting point. But yeah, then it would be interesting to do a comparison economically between the price that the innovation leaders are paying to sort, because they have to pay so many women to sort for such, it takes so much time to sort and it's not still properly, perfectly done. If they could instead pay to sort at the source and get higher quality, like maybe it would be worth it. Yeah, I don't know, but this is definitely something that has to be investigated.
Yeah, thank you. There are quite a lot of questions in the chat room. I'm
Yeah,
not sure if you want me to read for you.
Yeah, I didn't have time to read them.
I can read for you if you want.
Yeah, I'm going through them now. So just for the Christian, so the site I didn't select Huye Muhanga.
Why
yeah,
did
so
you
in a sense, my sites, I selected them myself by meeting people, discussing and trying to make a sample that is a little bit similar but different. And I didn't want to focus on Kigali because first we worked in Kamoni, and then we wanted to have some more smaller scale, because Kigali is, it's the big city in Rwanda, but Kigali has totally other means than the secondary cities. And I wanted to more focus on smaller scale with less available infrastructure. And that's why I focused on this Kamoni, Huye, Nyanza, and Gicumbi. How can we overcome to the problems? What do you mean with mitigation issues, Christian? How can we overcome to the problems you realized during your research? The mitigation issues, I don't understand what you ask.
Yeah, how do you think we can overcome the challenges of sorting the waste that you saw? Because you realized that they were too much mixed, poisoned waste mixed in with the organic, So
yeah, I think it's huge. It's as always the same. It's really pushing this in the schools. I guess it starts by the schools and explaining to people also. The plastic is really increasing in Rwanda. And of course you banned it, but you still see lots of plastics lying around. So I guess it's really like just public sensitization about about the different value of the waste and which waste is polluting, which waste is not polluting. And yeah, I guess maybe like this push approach where a household would get paid to sort and would, I mean, you have an incredible system of implementing policies in Rwanda with all these community gatherings. So, I mean, I think if Rwanda can achieve this. It's a small and super well-organized country. And I'm sure that if there's if there's a will from the government to push now for waste sorting, this can be done in Rwanda because of the way that you're organized with the villages, district villages cells. So yeah, this would be really the way forward to raise awareness and organize the sorting and train people on sorting, and then train maybe women on sorting. I don't know. I mean, women are doing it right now. So of course, I would advocate for sharing the care tasks at home, but in Rwandan society, women are doing most of the household duties. So maybe they would be more exposed to doing this separation at source. I don't know what you as Rwandan would say. How does it work in your homes, the waste?
Thank you. I saw that you raised some waste management that one of them is biochar production. Because it is quite good to use biochar production system. I don't know, did they have machine that can produce perfectly the biochar?
Yeah, so the biochar innovation is in South Africa. And in my memory, I'm not focusing on South Africa, so I might do a mistake, but they did a very low, everything is quite low tech in Runnerist. That's really also the idea that the innovations can be really managed by the local people and that they don't depend on importation of complex high tech stuff. And I think they really built an oven that creates these anoxic conditions to burn this organic material. And in the biochar innovation, they were using feces. But so yeah, I don't know, I don't think there's a specific brand or machine that they are using, but they really built this type of oven in my memory. But I can put you in contact with the team if you're interested, the South African team.
Do you think if you can adopt the biochar production in Rwanda cannot be one of the good approach to handle the issue of food waste?
Yeah, for sure. I think like the idea is really to see that these multiple, I mean, all the animal feed innovations were extremely valuable for all the smallholder farmers in Rwanda. But yeah, I guess like in each different department and district, depending on the farming practices that are there, you have to choose which type of innovation will work better. And that's really what we're trying to do in Runnerist is at the end of the project, it's going to be for 4 more years to have like a portfolio of innovation options with different criterias in terms of capital that you need to run this business, private versus public support. And then what are the outcomes of such an innovation? And this is a little bit what we aim to do with no one size fits all, but really different options to suit different contexts. But then I still see there's quite some questions in the chat. So since waste are mixed, both organic and non-degradable waste, did I get information on what non-degradable waste are used for? Yeah, after sorting. Okay, so to Andrew, if you're still there. Yeah, so actually in the compost sites, some are collecting the plastics, the plastic bottles that they are compacting. Also, they're also doing the same with carton, papier carton, that they're drying and compacting, and then they get an Ugandan person that comes and buy these materials to them. So this is one of the things. Some other innovations, as I said, they are burning plastics. and melting it to produce these bricks that Rwandan people like a lot, these hexagonal bricks to build their houses. At the moment, the glass nobody's buying glass. So on the Coeb side, there's accumulation of huge amounts of glass that are also lying around. Yeah, and there's different types of plastics. I'm not the plastic expert, but for like some types of bags, the most low quality of plastics, there's absolutely nothing to do with them. So at Green Care, but you can maybe go and visit Green Care. They're not far from you in Huye. Yeah, they have accumulations of tons of these small plastic bags that have nothing to do. Also textile. But then at the moment, as everything is mixed and the waste collection is also not very regular, all the waste is really degrading together, and the smell is really intense, and it degrades also the textile. So it's hard to recover in this state. It's really hard to recover the waste. Yeah, so I think that's all. And on the smaller scale, like the Ineza in the north, the women were separating also the metallic caps of bottles, and then they were selling this to some very small scale vendors somewhere in Bjumba. This is what I can say. So there are some of these waste streams that have a buyer, but a lot of them also don't have a buyer, which increases the complexity of the whole system. And when you don't have space to store, then they're also very much annoyed because they don't know what to do with all this waste that comes in with the organic waste. I will go to Simon. So my question is about transformation of waste, kind of conversion, if more that compost, like feed, bioconversion using worms. Did you think about that, and what were your observations? So yeah, of course. So Simon, so as I mentioned, there are a lot of it that is compost, but the more lucrative innovations were the ones producing animal feed. This is also what we really observed until now. Doing compost is really, it's such a high cost to produce compost. It's really difficult, especially with this mix of waste. But producing animal feed with black soldier larvae out of this fruit waste from Inyanze, this is quite a lucrative. Quite lucrative. It's not lucrative, but it's providing some income, let's say, to put it in a more average way, because animal feed is it's so expensive to buy it in Rwanda. So the market is also very different, and I think this is something with all the aquaculture development, it's really a direction to go. There's actually an article today in the New Times Rwanda about changes in the standards for insect-based animal fertilizers. So check the newspaper, the New Times, or maybe I can multitask and drop it in the chat. Let's see if I manage to do that. I'm not always a very good multitasker, but for sure, these topics are being talked more and more, and this again is very, very positive. Okay. New Times articles. Okay, I think I found it, so I can just drop it in so you can read it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I guess it's slowly time, right? Voila, let me try. Okay, I sent something.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I hope this maybe helps. Okay, and maybe the last, I will just write my email in the chat in case somebody wants to continue the discussion. I'm very happy to get more feedback. I spent quite some months in Rwanda, but I'm obviously not Rwandan, so it's always good to also hear what is your opinion and do the reality check with people who know the country much better than me. So I guess I will thank you all. I will save the chat not to lose the questions, and yeah, please feel free to email me if you have a further comment about this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mélanie. So shall we come to the end? And it really was exciting, and I can say everyone was happy. We wish we could continue. I hope if you still have another chance to talk to us to hear maybe your next step on your results. So you are very welcome. So I think without further ado, I can say thanks to everyone who participated in this seminar. And yeah, happy Women's Day for those who join later. And have a great evening. So we'll see you at next seminar. And on behalf of the center, thank you, everyone. Take this time to join our seminar.
Thanks a lot for inviting me again. And yeah, we'll stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good afternoon or good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.